Hey, this is a very quick video. I mean that. I mean that really. A quick video for a prep for a quicker video, which is going to be Tuesday reads because it's not going to be Monday reads, um, where I will kind of pop through a bunch of a bunch of books that I have read in the last while since I last had my last confession. Um, Better Living Through Criticism, A.O. Scott's book, um, on him examining what is criticism, um, what's its uses, why we should give a great goddamn, why it's actually vital to art, that it is a it's a thing of, if you don't actually have anyone viewing art, reading it, processing it, being affected by it, do you actually have art? I would argue yes. Um, so there that I found it a little on the ephemeral side. That it evaporated a little bit as I was reading it. And indeed, now that it's been a couple of weeks later, I have a hard time holding on to what was there. So I don't know if it made it is like it's intelligent, but I don't know if it actually stuck with me. Um, good. Um, The Man from Glengarry, 1901 Canadian novel by Ralph Connor. Um, Didactic Christian, empire building Canada, and for all that, uh, being for all it being not a very good novel, it was a striking novel, and it held my attention all the way through. And it was a good kind of peek into kind of about early Canadian mentality about, um, this taking the land, and the mythology of the disappeared native people, and just, oh, it's all empty and we can take it, with one of the chief architects of that, um, John A. Macdonald, the first Prime Minister of Canada, and who had been fairly unproblematic until a while ago, just seen as kind of the founding father of our country, great man. And it's like there's definitely a lot more nuance to that perspective. Um, in all conscience, I can't just completely, you can't dismiss him, because basically I live on top of his legacy. But it's like it's a complicated legacy, and one that we should really examine as Canadians, and especially if we want to have any sort of decent, honorable relationship with the native peoples who were here first, and we certainly have not had that for the grand majority of our history, and continue not to. So yeah, there's that. Finished. I read Elmore Leonard's The Moonshine War, a novel written in 1969, set in 1931 Prohibition Kentucky. Um, and man, it's a novel that opens up with a white racist character using white racist language on page one, which was like a right whack to my head right there. Um, and I mean, it would be historically accurate. It's this is but and it's an entertainment, so should entertainments be using such language? But I take my entertainments very seriously, so um, it's a weaker Elmore Leonard novel in the fact that the villains were far more striking, and a little bit more, far more, had more weight to them than the protagonist, um, son Martin, who is a very taciturn guy who won't give up his 150 or 160 bottles of whiskey that the villains want. Um, but it's, as with all Elmer Leonard, it's very well plotted. gets to the end and stops immediately, which it's like, it's embracing in how abrupt his endings are, which might not like, or you might go, yeah, like me. Um, I finished The Club, which is a nonfiction book by Leo Damarosk, all about a literary gentleman's club that was founded by Samuel Johnson, the famous for doing one of the first English dictionaries, for his criticism, for his Lives of the Poets, founded by him and Joshua Reynolds, great portrait painter of that era. But the true stars of this book, where it's where the club is like the library book, which was by Susan Orleans, has a central conceit at the center of it, which we sort of are just using to organize things around, and we're organizing things around uh, telling the interesting bits of the life of Samuel Johnson and James Boswell, his biographer, and kind of his biographer and the kind of sycophant um, guy, and it's like, and but around those duo, you get Edmund Burke, one of the great politicians, Irish Anglo-Irish politician of the era. You get Edward Gibbon, who both Johnson and Boswell hated for his Christian skepticism in his great work, The Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire. Um, who you get you get you get Adam Smith, also a member of the club, who the wealth of nations, the economics of the era. Um, you get Garrick. Oh, I can't remember what his last name is. Garrick, who is like one of the the premier actors and directors, stage managers of the era, who seems to have kind of ushered in what we would consider a lot of more modern ideas of doing stage acting today, and was one of the great, probably one that seems to be one of the great proponents and elevators of Shakespeare to from a level of being like, oh, a well-respected playwright, to being Shakespeare, kind of representative of all that is high of literature in the English language. Um, definitely one of the things of that, and very famous for his portrayals of Shakespearean characters. Um, so it gives you a portrait of Johnson, who seemed like a fairly tortured fellow in his physical and mental ailments, and Boswell, a a drunken, venereal ridden um, doofus, who I have to say, it's like Boswell actually deserves to be amongst this group for being kind of the originators of a new kind of like doing a biography, and bringing this. He's The Life of Johnson is considered kind of the first modern biography of a figure, and of bringing Johnson to life, probably rescuing Johnson from obscurity to something that is like well known, like a doofus like me would actually still know about Johnson today. And I actually read The Life of Johnson not that long, finished it finally that not that long ago, and while it has major lulls and God, all those fucking letters in there, the moments where he is reporting like conversations between Johnson and various members and himself, because he hung around with Johnson so much, are just amazing. And they do bring Johnson, the great conversationalist and kind of cranky old dude, and moralist, and humor, the humor to life in a way that I am still working on having the chops to actually read Johnson's writing, which is talked about as the periodic style, where he does great paragraphs that kind of balance out and are interlinked, and you've got to know that this part hits to this part way back a couple of sentences ago and to this part. And it's just like, to me, it feels unreadable, but it's a lost kind of state of writing. Yeah, so yeah, really enjoyed this book. Is the short thing, but I'm obviously just trying to do a review of it again. See, this is what I'm trying not to do. um I am I am finished. Hopefully, maybe by the time I do the actual review, I will talk about Othello in a separate video on this reading of it, which was actually greatly benefited when all the ShakeTube folk, Jason at Old Blues Chapter and Verse, Lukash at the Something Reader, always forget his new Cruel Reader's Thesis, and Rainy at Rainy Days Read got together to talk about Othello, and they were very much talking about Othello as a black man in this thing. And it's like, but also noting kind of to the sides, like, well, we don't know what that meant in Shakespearean time to be a black man. They're all Americans, so they're when they think of black man in a white society, they've got a certain way of thinking about things, and they kind of acknowledge that. And I was thinking, was like, well, it's like, it's Othello, the black man of Venice, but it's Othello, the Moor of Venice, and the Moor was was something that was, yes, definitely associated with blackness, but is also a religious thing. And indeed, Othello is a convert to Christianity. And I read a lot of the rest of the play that way, being mindful through my reading Don Quixote and reading kind of works of romance, of chivalry around that the idea of the Moor was very much, it was a racial one, but it was also very much a religious one, of infidels, of subhumans who did not have, if you did not believe in God, you were damned to hell. And the constant references to devils in the play, and to the idea of heaven and heaven's forgiveness, and Othello's. Yeah, that's something I've really enjoyed looking into with Othello, and might actually just do a little separate video on that if I have all the time in the world, which I probably don't. So yeah, maybe I've finished that by the time I actually do my review. I'm continuing to read Beyond the West, History of British Columbia, in preparation, because at the beginning of November I'll be reading On the Cusp of Contact, which is sort of a follow-up book by Gene Barman, who wrote this history book, Beyond the West, that I'm reading at the moment. And this is a bit of a follow-up book, which is Gender, Space, and Race in the Colonization of British Columbia, because her book, West Beyond the West, definitely shows the limitations of the 90s, or what, standing here in this privileged spot in 2021, 30 years later, you can more clearly see attitudes and thoughts about, oh, we've solved racism. And I'm not saying that Gene Barman says that, but you can feel that slight bit of, especially Canadian, complacency of like, oh, we've sorted this stuff out and we're not terrible anymore. Whereas I think we're slowly starting to at least get to the point of realizing how terrible we are, slowly, as we actually listen to the people whose lives are daily affected by this shit, and not just going like, well, I'm a white person and things seem great. It's like, that's maybe not the best barometer of things. So yeah, that's going well. I'm hitting some of the final chapters of that. Because I'm a complete sheep, Steve Donahue held up Actress by Anne Enright, and went, this is a really great novel. A contemporary novel by Irish novelist Anne Enright. You should totally read this. And I went, oh, okay, Steve, and went on to my library thing, and they had the audiobook of it, downloaded it. It's read by Anne Enright in this kind of rueful, kind of warm Irish accent of that she has, and a great book about a adult daughter dealing with kind of the legacy of her mother, who was a famous actress and who seems to have kind of overshadowed much of her life. And she now finds herself at the age where she is like a year older than her mother was when she died, and is going into uncharted territory, and is kind of dealing with that legacy. But I guess I'll see how it goes. It seems like it's dealing with that legacy, but also just trying to come to terms with that, but also to um, separate herself out from it. So yeah, I'm really enjoying that. Hey, and that's the best kind of little blurby thing that I had there of the lot of them. So yeah, that's what I'm reading at the moment. And it's still 15 minutes long, but there's some things in there that I could cut. Like I went way too far deep into the club, and probably into Othello as well. So I will leave it there, and more videos later, like this video, but done outside with a little bit more blurby. I can try, I can dream, I can dream. All right, more videos later.